Welcome to another video lecture by Utkalp Digital Classes. I am your tutor for the course, and today we are going to discuss system of particles and impulse. The important topics from this chapter are impulse and momentum, conservation of momentum, collisions, and system of particles, in which we will focus on center of mass. So let's start with the first section, which is impulse and momentum. Till now, we were studying about kinematics of particles, Newton's laws of motions, and methods of work and energy. In Newton's law, I talked about the relations between forces acting on a body, and we found the accelerations at that instant. Okay, so those were used to analyze what was happening at an instant. Next, we looked at work, power, energy chapter, in which we obtained equations of motions over a path. So methods of work and energy helped us to explore the changes in speed over a position interval. Now in this lecture, we will direct our attention to the principle of impulse and momentum, and this will facilitate us with another method to explore what is happening over a time interval. So let's start with the first one. Mark the equation in green for you. The first definition that I've given for you is the definition of impulse. Impulse is nothing but the integral of the force with respect to time, or this is more commonly known as linear impulse or simply impulse. Now, by impulse, for a one-dimensional impulse, for a one-dimensional force, by impulse equals to the area between the force time graph and the time axis. For example, if I draw a force time graph, and you have been asked to calculate the impulse, so the area between time t1 and t2 is nothing but the force. If several forces are acting, for example f1, f2 till fn are acting on a body in a time interval, then the total impulse, which is given by this expression, is equal to the impulse of the net forces. So anyways, you have to integrate a force at the end. So what you do is you first calculate all the forces that are there, you take the summations of them with you using the superposition principle, and then you take an integral. So these two are the general basic formulas if a question directly asks you what a impulse in a system is. You should also take a note that the dimensions of impulse are ml t minus 1, because force was ml t minus 2, and then you multiply it with time. Now we come to something known as the impulse momentum principle, which is the first thing that we are going to discuss. So if a force is acting during a time interval from t1 to t2, and during this time the velocity of the body changes from v1 to v2, or simply vi to vf, v initial to vf, then we have to, if we integrate this equation, what we see is this is nothing but m into vf minus m into vi. But we've already learned before that these are nothing but momentums. So my impulse over a time t. Note that we will always talk about impulse when a time has been given, a duration of time. So my impulse over a time t is nothing but my final momentum minus my initial momentum. Okay. Now this idea is expressed as the impulse momentum principle. Sometimes this can come as a factual question. This states that the change in momentum of a body in a time interval equals to the impulse of the net force. Now my f here can be this entire superposition of all the forces that are acting on the body. Okay, so this equation states that impulse of a force during a time interval, when added to a momentum of a body at the beginning of an interval of time, we get the momentum of the body at the end of the time interval, which is there in the third equation. I just rearranged the second equation. So this is how you can imagine your impulse. You are adding it to your initial momentum You're adding a quantity here to your initial momentum to get a final momentum Pf. Again, you should note that because impulse and momentum both are vector quantities, so the impulse momentum theorem can be expressed by three scalar equations using the Cartesian components. I have used the Cartesian coordinates right now. You can, if you use polar or spherical coordinates also, the things remain the same. So I have written it down in three parts, which is in the x direction, in the y direction, and in the z directions. So questions previously have been asked from here, and I have made a note of two important points for you. First of all, gravitational force and spring force are always non-impulsive. They're not impulsive forces. And the second point is an impulsive force can only be balanced by another impulsive force. So if a force leads to an impulse on a system, then in order to cancel it, you need another impulsive force. Let's look at one basic question. That is a application of the formula that you've just read. So a particle of mass 2 kg is moving in free space with velocity given by v naught. Okay, and now it is acting upon by a force of F is equal to 2i cap plus j cap minus 2k cap. Now we are supposed to find the velocity of the particle after 3 seconds. After 3 seconds when you started to apply the force. So how do you do this? Just now we heard that my final momentum is nothing but my initial momentum plus an impulse. Okay, using the impulse momentum theorem. So my final momentum is mvf, initial was mv0 plus my force into delta t. Okay, the change in time. Now if we just substitute the values, we get that 2vf is equal to 2 into 2i minus 3j plus k plus 2i plus j minus 2k into 3 is equal to 10i minus 3j minus 4k. These are all caps. So that implies my Vf is a vector quantity is equal to 5i minus 1.5j minus 2k, and note what the units are, meter per second. So let's look at another question, which is two boxes A and B of masses small m and big M are interconnected by an ideal rope, and ideal pulleys are held at rest as shown. When this system is released, box B accelerates downwards. So you are then asked to find the velocities of boxes A and B as a function of time t. Okay, so let me just draw this diagram again for some clarity. So this is my top. Okay, I have one pulley here. I have two strings. One is attached to A. Okay, another is going over another pulley, and this is getting attached to the top. Okay, there is a tension here, same tension here, same tension here. Okay, and to this pulley is attached a box B. Okay, this is the condition of the question. Now next, what is given? We are given that the box B is accelerating downwards. So first of all, if it's accelerating, there is velocity B also, and there is an acceleration of B also. Similarly, there is a velocity of A, acceleration of A. Okay, so the basic thing is clear now. Now first we need to explore the relations between the acceleration of A, which is AA, and acceleration of B, which is AB. So because this turns out to be a constraint relation, or you can even use the method of virtual work, or by inspection you can find that the velocity of A is equal to 2 times velocity of B. Because using the constraint principle, This because the length is constant, the length does not change. That is why you will get your velocity of A is 2 times your velocity of B. Now, in order to solve this question, you can easily apply the impulse momentum principle to the different boxes. Okay, so let me draw the FBD for the box A. So if I draw the FBD for box A, let this be box A. Then let me draw the impulses that are acting on A. So there is a tension into small time t on top. Similarly, there is a gravitational force acting on it. So there is a m small mgt. Okay. For block B, if I draw it, what are the forces acting? There are two tension forces, this one and this one. So there is a 2t into small t, which is the impulse, and then I have the big mg and t. Okay. So what this actually means is this body is going up with the velocity m v times a. This is going up with the velocity going down with the velocity m v times b. Note, if I was making the FBD with forces, if these were forces, then I would have written accelerations here. But because I have written impulses, so I have written momentums here. So let's come to the left side of the screen. And let me use another pen doing this again. Okay. So now you can just easily use the impulse momentum theorem. Let me apply it to the box A. We have P2y is equal to P1y plus summation of my impulses in y direction. Okay, I've chosen my coordinate system to be like this. It's similar to balancing forces because now impulses are also vector quantities, so you're just trying to balance them. So what you get is mva is equal to 0 plus tt minus small mgt. This is the first equation. If I do the same thing for the second box, which is box B, this is for box A. If I do it for the box B, I will get a similar equation, which is small m Vb equal to 0 plus big M G T minus 2 times big T and small t. This is for equation B. If you just use these equations, you will find that Va is equal to 2 times big M minus 2m by m plus 4m gt, whereas Vb is equal to m minus 2m by m plus 4m gt. So what did you find in the question? You were able to find velocities of a system when forces were acting on it without finding the acceleration. So we did not look for the acceleration in the system. If this was done without using impulses and there was no time involved, then this was similar to a Newton's laws of motion question, in which your forces were given and then you had to find the acceleration on the bodies. Now you can easily use this method to find out velocities without finding acceleration. Okay, so if in a question velocities are asked from you and time has also been given, so try to approach the question using the impulse momentum theorem. Next, let's briefly look at conservation of linear momentum. So first of all, let me tell you about what are internal forces and external forces. So bodies applying forces on each other can be termed as interacting bodies. Now if we consider interacting bodies as a system, then the forces which they apply on each other will be known as internal forces, whereas the forces applied by them from outside the system will be known as external forces. So this is the basic definition that you should keep in mind while attempting any question. And what does the principle of linear momentum say? The principle says that the total momentum of a system of two interacting bodies remains unchanged under the action of the forces of interaction between them. It can only change if a net impulsive force is applied on it externally. Okay, and there are some conditions under which this is valid. So the first condition says that when no external force acts on any of the particles of the body, when F external is equal to 0. Okay. Another condition for this to happen is when the resultant of all the external forces acting on all the particles or body is 0. So if my resultant is 0, even then you can apply the principle of conservation of linear momentum. Also, in an impulsive motion, where time interval is negligibly small, where t is limiting to 0. Okay, the direction in which no impulsive forces act, then the total component of momentum in that direction remains conserved. Okay, so if my time is negligible, I'll just write it here. If my time is negligibly small, then in the direction in which there are no impulsive forces acting, then the total component of momentum in that direction will remain conserved. Okay, so these three things should be kept in mind if you are applying the principle of linear momentum. Mathematically, this says that in my system, the total initial momentum of all the particles is equal to the total final momentum of all the particles. Okay, this is easily explained by one of the questions that are often asked in the papers, or a type of questions like this. This is something known as the ballistic pendulum. So this ballistic pendulum is generally used to measure speed of bullets. It consists of a wooden block right here suspended from a fixed support. Okay, so let's do a question on the ballistic pendulum. It can help us use this basic property. So what does the question say? There is a wooden block of mass capital M which is suspended with the help of two threads to prevent any rotation while swinging. A bullet of mass M, this is the bullet, it comes in horizontally with V0, hits the block and becomes embedded in the block. Receiving momentum from the bullet block system swings to a height h. You are supposed to find the speed of the bullet in terms of the given quantities. So, why are we applying the principle of linear momentum here? You should note that when the bullet hits the block, that happens in a negligible time interval. Okay, so that is happening in a negligible time interval. Now, during this process, the net force acting on the bullet block system in the vertical direction is 0, and there will be no force acting in the horizontal direction. Therefore, the momentum of the bullet block system will remain conserved. So before applying anything, you should make sure that the condition, one of these conditions is valid. Only then can you apply the principle of linear momentum, because in the examination sometimes they will just give you a question to trick you, and then if you blindly apply the principle of conservation, then you might not get the right result. So initially my bullet and my block systems are separate. Immediately after the bullet becomes embedded in the block, this is what my system will look like. This is right after my bullet is inside the block, and then they have some momentum p. Okay, so let me denote the momentum of the bullet block system immediately after the bullet becomes embedded as p, and apply the principle of conservation of linear momentum in the horizontal direction. Okay, so my initial was mv naught and final of this entire system is v, so I can write this as p is equal to mv naught. Okay, using my principle of linear momentum, which says this. Okay, p is equal to mv naught. Now using the kinetic energy equation, I have my kinetic energy is equal to p square by 2m of the bullet block system. We can find the kinetic energy k1 of the bullet block system immediately after the bullet becomes embedded in the block. So if I just apply this, I get kinetic energy of the system. Let me call it k1 is equal to m v naught square by 2 m plus m. So this is my first equation. Now what will happen is right after this happens, my bullet block system will swing to some distance. It's given that it does not rotate. Okay, so it was initially here, and what will happen is from its initial position this was its initial position, it has swung to some point, okay, and at this point it has some kinetic energy too, and there is a height involved, some height, it has risen to some height. Now you can easily apply the principles we read earlier in the chapter on work or energy. So W12 is equal to K2 minus K1. Okay, this is the kinetic energy at this height. That implies I can write minus m plus m gh 0 minus m v naught square by 2 big M plus small m. This is from the above equation. If you just rearrange these terms, you will get v naught is equal to m plus m by m root 2 gh. So this is the basic example of principle of linear momentum. So the 3 points that I mentioned here, these need to be, I think I need to star them properly so that you remember these. Before starting the question, it will take you maybe 5 or 6 seconds maximum to see if these conditions are valid. If they are, only then approach with the conservation of linear momentum. Now let's quickly discuss collisions and impact. So there are two basic types of collisions, which are central and eccentric. I'll just draw a diagram to explain. Let there be a collision between two bodies, A and B. I'll call one as A, one as B. So this is my A, this is B, this is A, this is B. So there are two collisions that I'm talking about. I'll call one as central, one as eccentric. So let me tell you what is the difference between these two. So first of all, the common normal at the point of contact between the bodies is known as the line of impact. So this is the common normal. This is the point of contact when they collide. Okay, so the common normal is like this. Okay, and the tangent to this will be this. For future references, this will be known as T, and this line as N. Okay, so in the central impact case, what happens is the centers of both the bodies, the center of B is here, the center of A is here, the centers of both the bodies lie on the line of impact. However, in the eccentric case, if my body B, I've already drawn that to be a little deformed, but I'll draw it again. If my body B is of some shape, so that the center is somewhere here. Okay, now if I draw the lines again, my line of impact is again this, which is normal to the point of contact, and my tangent line at this point is again this. Okay, but now my center is here and the center of A is here. So although the center of A lies on the line of contact, which is N, okay, but the center of B does not lie on the line of contact. So we will call this motion as eccentric. Eccentric will lead to rotations in the system. Central will not lead to any rotations. So we will focus on central in this chapter. So first of all, central is also known as head-on compact. And before starting this, I'll just briefly tell you what happens during this, because so that we can connect to the momentum and impulse theorem that we've talked about before. So let me imagine two blocks are there, bodies are there, A and B, and A is moving with a velocity UA, B is moving with a velocity UB, and A has a higher velocity. So let's say UA is greater than UB. Okay, now what will happen is UA will go and hit UB, and there will be two periods. First of all, they will try to, in the first period, which I call as the deformation period, they will both imply forces on each other, and because a force is applied for a time t, there is a impulse applied on each other, and that will try to deform both of them. They will deform to a maximum point, and then they will attain velocity u, where they are both stuck together. Okay, after this point, they will again start implying impulses on them. Why? Because these are actual materials, so they have some elastic properties of their own. So they will try to apply forces on them, and what that will do is that will decrease the velocity of A, and that will increase the velocity of B. If B was at rest initially and this was moving, even if it was not at rest, if this condition was valid. Okay, so VA will start to decrease its velocity and VB will start to increase its velocity. So the second time is what is known as the restitution period. Note that if the body is inelastic, then it will keep moving with this common velocity u. There are two phases that are involved in any impact question. So now, using the impulse momentum theorem, you have your initial ball that is moving to the right side, and then there is a deformation impulse acting on it by the block B, because as they collide there is a force applied by block B on block A that will lead to a impulse from B to A. Okay, so that impulse is denoted by integral of d into dt. I am calling that force as deformation force as d, and then I am taking the impulse. So I have my initial momentum, I have applied an impulse on it, I will get the final momentum, okay, of my block A, only for the deformation period. Similarly, I apply my impulse momentum theorem of the block A in the restitution period. What happens is, now it is moving with the velocity u, common velocity u, then there is a restoration force on it which will apply an impulse r dt that will lead to a final velocity as v. Okay, so I can do this for the block B as well, and when I write all these equations down, and when I use all the four equations, two for block A and two for block B, what I really find is an equation that pops out, which is nothing but the principle of conservation of momentum. What this says is the initial momentum summation of pi is equal to summation of pf. So in all kinds of collisions, whether they are elastic collisions or inelastic collisions, my principle of momentum will be valid. Note that all these are vector quantities which we will be using later, so that is why I am mentioning it that here. Let us mark this equation. Next, let me just briefly tell you about what is the coefficient of restitution. So usually the force D that I applied here during the deformation period, okay, differs from the force R that is applied. The force R that is applied by the bodies during the restitution period. Therefore, it is not necessary that the magnitude of the impulse integral d dt, this impulse, and the magnitude of the restitution impulse will be same. Okay, because they are not same, so I define a quantity known as the coefficient of restitution, which is nothing but the ratio of the magnitude of impulses of deformation divided by deformation and the coefficient of restitution, okay, which I have mentioned here. So E is nothing but impulse of reformation by impulse of deformation, which is Fr by Fd. Let the force be Fr. I will call it as R here, and ddt integral, which is nothing but the velocity of separation along the line of contact divided by velocity of approach along the line of contact. So for doing questions, you should remember this form, which I have carefully mentioned here as well, so that you can take a note. So it's the velocity of separation along the line of contact. Note that along the line of contact is an important thing. When you will go for oblique collisions, you will look at this. So my E is generally studied for three specific values: E is equal to 1, E is equal to 0, and E between 0 and 1. For E is equal to 1, my impulse of reformation is equal to impulse of deformation, and we call this condition as elastic collision. What you need to remember for a point of view of the question, you know that velocity of separation is equal to velocity of approach, and kinetic energy may be conserved in the system. Okay. Secondly, if you study E is equal to 0, then impulse of reformation and deformation impulse of reformation is 0. Deformation happened, but they stuck together and they moved with a common velocity u. Okay, so in this, the kinetic energy is definitely not conserved. Okay, and this is known as perfectly inelastic collision. Okay, and similarly you can have the values of E between 0 and 1. Okay, but in all these values again kinetic energy is not conserved, but note that linear momentum will always be conserved irrespective of what the value of E is. Okay, for doing the questions, you should, for the basic strategy to solve any questions of head-on impact, should be first write down the momentum conservation equation, which is this one, and secondly just use this equation to rearrange the velocity terms. So you should write Vb minus Va is equal to E times Ua minus Ub. Okay, using these two equations you can probably solve all the other questions in the system. If it is given that it is a elastic collision, then you can even use the kinetic energy conservation. Okay, these three things are the most important. I have mentioned a general formula of the speeds after collision. I have mentioned them as v1 v2 and u1 u2. You can try to memorize these formulas, but they are not really essential because you can easily derive them in the paper using just these two quantities. Now let's look at oblique central impact or free motion or freely moving bodies. Okay, so what is oblique central impact? In oblique central impact, velocity vectors of both or one of the bodies are not along the line of impact, and the mass center of bodies are on the line of impact. Note that this is not eccentric, so mass centers are again, my mass centers here, for example, this is the point of contact, then still my mass centers are on the line M. Okay, but my velocities are not. Now to analyze this impact, what you need to do is I'll just quickly show you these diagrams in which I show you the components of velocity before and after the impact along the common tangent and the line of impact. So these are the terms that you should be wary about. So let me just draw the immediately before impact thing. Let me zoom it in so that you can easily see it properly. Okay, so my velocity E was UA in UA, so I can first my two directions will be the tangential direction and the normal direction to the point of contact, which was this. I'll call this the axis and this is T. Okay, now it becomes very easy if I try to decompose them. I'll call this as UA in the tangential direction. Okay, and similarly I have UA in the normal direction. Similarly for the velocity of B, I can write the velocity of B again as if I just write it, I can simply I'll do one thing, I'll draw this for you again. This is my center, this is my UB. Okay, so UB is nothing but UB in the direction of tangent, and you have a UB in the direction of normal. Okay, similarly for the second one as well, I can easily draw it. So I'll just draw it for this. Let's erase this VA first because I'm redrawing it. So I'll start from here. This is my VA, is the final velocity. Again it is along and where my normal is along this direction and my tangent is along this direction again. Okay, similarly for my VB also I can easily split this into VB along the tangential direction and VB along the normal direction. Okay, so this is what you should always keep in mind when solving any question from the oblique central impact, and there are certain things that you will be needing to do. So first of all, the components about the t-axis. If surfaces of both the bodies that are undergoing the impact are smooth, in the question they will generally mention that the bodies are smooth. Okay, so they cannot apply any force on each other along the t-axis, and the component of the momentum along the t-axis of each body is considered separately is conserved. Okay, so from this I can easily write my VAT is equal to UAT and my VBT is equal to UBT. You should make a note of this. Okay, along the tangential direction. Now if I talk about the components of velocities along the n-axis or the normal the line of impact, then this will be similar to the impact that we were treating before in the previous central impact case. Okay, so in these velocity directions you will apply the principle of linear momentum. So you will write mb vb n plus ma van is equal to mb ubn plus ma uan. Okay, so note that in the central impact case that we were doing before, we were taking the y and x axis separately and then doing principle of applying the principle of linear momentum, conservation of principle of linear momentum in both the directions separately. Here along the t you can just conserve the separate momentums. Okay, and along the n axis you have to write the general equation, and the second equation that we had came from the restitution one is equal to un minus ubn. Okay, so it's not difficult at all. You should just take a note of these two. This is what they generally do in the papers to trick you, so you should take a note of this. Let's go down and look at a simple question that will tell you how to solve these questions properly or give you an idea. So a disk, I'm giving you this as an example. So a disk sliding with velocity u on a smooth horizontal plane strikes another identical disk kept at rest. Okay, so my B is at rest. If the impact between the disks is perfectly elastic impact, find velocities of the disks after impact. Okay, so first of all you need to make the t-axis and the n-axis. So how do you approach this question? You first need to draw the diagrams at the point of contact. Okay, I'll draw it more clearly. So at the point of contact, what will happen is my body B is somewhere here, my body A is here. Okay, A center is here, B center is here. Okay, now I need to draw the t-axis. You draw the t-axis. Let me call this the t-axis. I'll call this as the n-axis. Okay, now this is done. This is block A, this is block B. This is what you need to do in all the questions that come from this part. Now what you were given is my UA. My UA was given as U. So this was, mark it in black. So I was given that my U is in this direction. I can easily resolve it in the tangential direction. Wait, tangential direction UAT and my normal direction. So this is UAN. Okay, my velocity of B was 0. This is immediately before the impact. So you need to make the diagrams in order to solve these questions properly. And immediately after impact, you need to make a diagram again. So it's a similar diagram. You have two centers. You have the same two axes. One is the line of impact axis. One is the tangential axis. Okay, T, N, and then my velocities are again represented. Okay, so this was my velocity VA, I'll write it as a tangential direction and then in the normal direction. Okay, similarly my velocity of Bn will be in this direction. Why? I'll tell you with some equations. So let's see why. We first show the velocity. We first showed you the velocity components along the t and the n axis immediately before and after the impact. Okay. Now let's talk about the components along the t axis. So using the same principle that I told you here, I can easily write my VAT is equal to my UAT is equal to U by 2. Okay, I assume this has been this. No, this is 30 degrees because of the question. It's this angle is, sorry, not this angle. This angle is 30 degrees, as it is given that my central line is hitting at the top. Okay, this is U by 2. Okay, and my VBT, note that this you can check, just make the diagrams, just make the two circles and then you'll find that this angle comes out to be 30 degrees. So my VBT is my UBT is equal to 0. So this was my tangential direction from equation number 1. Okay, so now I'll talk about the normal direction. In normal direction you have to do the principle of conservation of linear momentum. So I'll just write the equation down. I have MB into VBN plus MA into VAN is equal to MB into UBN plus MA into UAN. Okay, that will imply MVBN plus MVAN is equal to M into 0 plus M into U into root 3 by 2. Okay, that implies VBN plus VAN is equal to U into root 3 by 2, cancelling the masses. Okay, I'll mark this. Now the concept of coefficient of restitution will be applied next. So my second equation that I told you, that you need to first apply this, then you need to apply this. Now if I apply the second equation, I can easily write VBN minus VAN is equal to E times UAN minus UBN. Okay, it is given that this is an elastic impact. So my VBN and VAN is nothing but U into root 3 by 2. Okay, I have two equations. Now I can easily solve them and find that VAN turns out to be, if I use this and this, if I okay, so VAN turns out to be 0 and VBN turns out to be U root 3 by 2. Okay, so now you can easily write the velocities. If I just substitute it back in the initial ones, if I just look at them in the diagram, this diagram, I can give you the exact velocities. Okay, so the last part that I wanted to discuss with you guys is oblique central impact with a constrained motion. So if surfaces of the bodies that are undergoing impact are smooth, then the T component of the momentum of the body that is free to move before and after the impact remains conserved. Okay, there are two bodies and there are constraints on its motion, and there are two properties that I want to just mention. Actually, three properties. So first of all, let us talk about the component along the t-axis. So for the component along the t-axis, if both my bodies are constrained, if both my bodies are constrained to move together or constrained by some other equations, then my t component of neither of them is conserved. T not conserved. Okay, if one of the bodies is free, one of them is free, which is the case here. Okay, if one of them is free, then the T component of the momentum of the body that is free to move, which is this one, before and after the impact remains conserved. So T component remains conserved. Okay, what about the N component? So first of all, we need to find the direction in which there is no external force that is acting on both the bodies. Then the component of total momentum in that direction is conserved. So direction, I'll write this properly. Direction with no F external, in that direction N, what about N? I'll just write it in general. So component of total momentum of both the bodies along this direction, write this properly, this direction remains conserved. Okay, the last one is about the coefficient of restitution. This is only applicable for the n component velocities. So you will have similar relations, VBN minus VBN equal to E times UAN minus UBN. Okay, these three things are what you should remember. If any question on oblique contact comes, because I've seen these questions coming in the papers recently. So let us discuss this using the example that I've just given you. These are slightly involved questions, so I need you to pay full attention, and if you are able to do this one, then most of the questions will be like this only. Either you will get something of this sort, or in the previous one, in the previous question that I showed you, you might get a question like there is a wall and you are throwing in a ball at an angle to the normal, which is theta. Okay, it is again the same thing. So I'll just talk about constraint here. This wall example was not a case of constraint motion. This example is, so a 250-gram ball is moving horizontally with some velocity, which is given as 10. It strikes an inclined surface of a 720-gram smooth wedge as shown in the figure. The wedge is placed at rest on a frictionless horizontal ground, and the coefficient of restitution is given, and you are asked to calculate the velocity of the wedge after the impact. Okay, so let me consider my ball as the object A and my wedge as the object B. Okay, after the impact, the ball bounces with the velocity VA and the wedge advances in a horizontal direction with velocity VB. Okay, these velocities and their T and N components are immediately before and after the impact shown by me next, or will be shown by me next. So I'll just draw them as mentioned before in the previous question as well. First you just draw the velocities, so that will make it simpler to do. I have my circle here, okay, and I had a wedge here. If this was my point of contact, okay, my T axis is, I'll just draw it again. If this is my circle, okay, then my normal axis is along this direction, and my tangential is along this direction. Okay, so it's basically like this: normal along this and tension along this. Okay, so my axes are made. Next, we talk about velocities. So my velocity was in the horizontal direction with respect to the Cartesian systems. So I'll just draw my velocity again. This was my initial velocity, UA. Okay, now because this wedge angle is given as 37, if I just use basic math, I will find that this angle is also 37. This U will be UAT. Okay, in the direction of I'll just write this again, UA in the tangential direction, and I will have a component UA in the normal direction. Note that the UB is 0, the wedge was at rest initially. Finally, what will be the diagram? I'll draw it again. Now I will draw the wedge separately, and I will draw the ball separately, because it's going to hit it, so the wedge will start to move in that direction. Okay, and this was my ball. Now what is the directions of the axes are fixed. I'll not make the those things again, but let the velocity be some VA and its components are VAT, and the normal one is VAN. Okay, and for my wedge, let this be the center of the wedge. Okay, this has a velocity VB and it has a normal component VN, and similarly the other component. So let me write the three components separately. You need to, for in all these questions, you need to evaluate the T component, the N component separately. Okay, let me just discuss what will happen in the T side. Okay, now the ball is free to move before and after the impact. Okay, so therefore its T component of momentum is conserved, as I said right here. Okay, so for the ball I can easily write my VAT is equal to UAT is equal to 10 cos 10 cos 37 10 cos 37, which is nothing but 8 meter per second. Okay, and let's talk about momentum conservation. In the t-axis there is no separate momentum conservation using the principle of linear momentum, but in the horizontal direction there is no external force on both the bodies. Okay, so you had to find a direction in which there is no external force on both the bodies. Okay, so we can easily take horizontal direction as that direction. So the horizontal component of total momentum of both the bodies will remain conserved. Okay, that will imply MAUA, because UB is equal to 0, MA VAT cos 37 minus VAN cos 53 plus MV VB. Okay, because VB is already in the X direction. How is this constrained? Look, this wedge cannot move down or any other way. Wedge can only move in these two directions. That is why the wedge is constrained, but the ball can easily move in any direction. Okay, so I have this, and you can just easily substitute the values, which I will get 0.25 into 10 is equal to 0.25 into 8 into 4 by 5 minus 3 VN divided by 5 plus 0.72 VB. This is one of the equations. Now I'll use the third one, the coefficient of restitution one. I can easily write VBN minus VAN. Note that the restitution equation can only be applied in the normal direction. Okay, it has nothing to do with the direction in which the force is zero. For the momentum conservation, you require that the force is zero, the net external force is zero in some direction. But for the restitution case, you will only apply it in the normal direction because it's relating to elasticity of the objects. So you have VBN minus VBN equal to UAN minus UBN. That implies 3VB by 5 minus VAN is equal to 0.8 into 6 minus 0. Okay, using these two equations, you can easily see that VB is equal to 2 meter per second.